Hi, this is John.
And this is Chris.
We're just two guys in their 40s trying to live life to the fullest, and what better way to help us along our path but to share our goals and ideas with a buddy.
The Accountability Call is our way of helping each other stay on the track and keep us moving on down the road of life. We hope you like it, and thanks for listening.
Need I say I love you? Need I say I care? Need I say that emotions are something we don't share? Why should I have to be the one who has to convince you that you know I know, baby, but I don't want to go? Ooh, 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 throwing it all away. All right, that was a long intro, but the point is Phil Collins' Genesis, throwing it all away. I think it delivers a nice message of his book, which is right behind you. Our folks are going to see it on video here in a second when you start talking, that he almost threw it all away, John.
Well, you could have kept going. I was just grooving over here, just grooving, listening, swaying to the music, brother. Yeah, he did. We read this book, guys. It's Phil Collins' memoir, Not Dead Yet. And, you know, I just finished it this past week. And I don't know if you ever read books like where you don't want it to end. I kept going, no, tell me more, tell me more. Oh, no, the pages are getting smaller. I'm towards the end of the book. And I don't know if that's how you felt. I do that sometimes with some of these books you read. You're just like, oh, shoot, I want more. Now there's got to be more. And I think obviously he got so fat, he just had to say, that's it. That's all we can put in a book. But he did almost throw it away. And talking about that, man, I'll just start with one reflection. He was a workaholic, but he also, everything he was doing was so good. He didn't want to disappoint you. It's almost like he didn't want to say no.
Yeah, that's a good point. He didn't want to say no. They would go on tour for 13 months at a time. Genesis did these worldwide tours that were over a year long. And it seems like the other people in the band, Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks, that was just their lifestyle that they carved out for themselves from the beginning. And Phil Collins had to kind of be on board with that, which it seems like he was. But then as they got more popular, people wanted to work with him. And yeah, how do you turn down the opportunity to work with Eric Clapton or, you know, Philip Bailey of Earth, Wind and Fire, or Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin? And so he was just everywhere all the time. And he even makes a lot of jokes, self-deprecating jokes about how he was so annoying because he was so ubiquitous during the 1980s.
He did. I like the way he was actually poking fun at himself and saying people were tired of Phil Collins and, you know, what else could I do? And but he looked back so many times in his book and was regretful. He was remorseful for some of these decisions. I mean, he loved what he did, but think about the other bandmates, Mike and Tony and these guys. They didn't have the same workload that he had because he launched a successful solo career and it took off, and he was touring just on his solo career and still touring for Genesis, you know, at the same time. And then he's also producing, like you mentioned, with some fantastic other artists. And all along the way, he married and had 3 divorces. And it's because he was the absentee husband, the absentee father, and it just wasn't clicking. And he knew what was going on, but he couldn't, even back 20, 30 years ago, there wasn't the same way to connect with people. It was just a long distance phone call. You couldn't instantaneously text. Email wasn't even around. So it was tough to have his schedule coincide with others, especially when his kids were halfway across the Atlantic and across the world. So you could see why all that fame and stardom has led him to post in this book a lot of regrets. He just did not have a great work-life balance.
Yeah, and obviously his was at an extreme level. You know, you and I and the people in our circle aren't traveling around the world, performing in front of tens of thousands of people, at least not yet.
Wow, yeah. You don't know everything about me.
You're right. I don't.
Nice cooker in the back, by the way. Nice cooker.
Like
I got Phil over my shoulder. You've got like an Instapot.
Oh, Instapots. Real deal. Let me tell you something. Real deal.
Sorry to jump in on that. Go on.
What I was saying was work-life balance, right? I mean, Phil Collins, here he is, this very successful guy in society's terms, made millions of dollars. We didn't talk about his absurd collection of Alamo artifacts, but millions of dollars, world renowned. People wanted to work with him from every, musical walk of life. And yet he has so many regrets about what a terrible father he was and what a terrible husband he was. And, in reading that, there's a lot of similarities in the work-life balance that we're all trying to figure out, right? Like, for instance, trying to set up a play date with my daughter and a girl in her class. And so the mom and I were texting, and we're trying to figure out a day next week that works. And so the mom texts me and she says, all right, Tuesday, we've got jujitsu. Thursday, we've got CrossFit for kids. Friday, my older daughter does swim lessons. And so there's like 6 things during the week. And I texted her back, sounds like our schedule. We've got swim lessons Mondays, Wednesdays. We've got gymnastics on Thursday. We've got Little League starting up this week. There's so much. And how do we find that work-life balance? How do we realize that it's okay that we're busy doing all of this stuff, so long as we are understanding of the reasons why we're doing this stuff, and so long as we're kind of taking a step back a lot of times, say, okay, even though we're running around like crazy, we're together in the space, right? Like, if we're just running around for running around's sake and getting you to this point and just like, oh my gosh, I can take a breath now, then we're doing it wrong. So I don't know what the trick is when it comes to all of this, but it seems like work-life balance is obviously a prevailing theme of this call that we have every week. And I don't think there's a correct answer, but does it get easier as your kids get older, or is it something that we all struggle with for our entire lives? Like, what is important? How do we focus on the important things?
Yeah, I mean, I know we create some of the chaos in our life with our hectic schedules by doing all these things. And maybe we think that it's because we're having together time between Little League and play dates and all that. We want to be the hero. We want to say yes, which is what Phil Collins did. I'm in demand. People want to work with me. How do I disappoint? I can't disappoint my bandmates. We got a tour. I don't really want a tour, but actually when I'm actually on the tour, I like it because, but I don't like being away from my kids and the family. And my wife is like, at home with twin boys struggling in Switzerland, and I can't be there. So there is that. I spent some time this week. You mentioned your schedule and play dates. I went up to look into a franchise opportunity with a yoga franchise. The gentleman who owns the brand and 8 other brands, his name's Anthony Geyser. They own Club Pilates, Pure Bar, I think Cycle Bar, this Yoga 6, and some others. He gave us a tour of his Irvine headquarters yesterday, walking us around. The guy looked very tired, had a huge cup of coffee. He just seems like he's buried. I think of him in terms of an Elon Musk of Tesla and SpaceX and solar, what's the other one they own? Solar something. And I finally got him for about 10, 15 seconds while everyone was still coming into the room as this big group was taking a tour. And I just said, how, Anthony, are you finding work-life balance? Because I could see the guy's just pulled in so many directions. And you could see he's just like, I got to do this tour with these guys. And I got to put my best face on. He goes, listen, I got a 9-month-old. I got a 4-year-old. It's been crazy busy. We're called Exponential Fitness, which is an X, like a 10. He's like, we've got 8 brands. I am not doing 10. People have talked about we're doing 10. Maybe that was the original thing. I can't do anymore. This is it. And he's ready to just like, because he's been going crazy for the last 15 years, building this empire. And I mean, it's impressive, but at what cost, right? And it's like, he's just fried. So I don't know. I mean, I get the whole drive. I get the type A. I have been guilty of that myself, but there's comes a time where it's like, what's really important is connecting with people close to you, having that social connection. How much money is enough? How do you say no when things are going good? I know there's a human greed factor there. There's all that. So I'm not actually sure where I'm going with it other than just to add 2 cents to your work-life balance thing. It's a constant work in progress. And I do think we need to reevaluate, maybe not weekly, but probably monthly, at least quarterly. If you let a whole year go by where you're going crazy with this work and you can lose a whole year of connecting with the people closest to you, right?
Yeah, totally. And then, like we've talked about before, you wake up a year later and you're like, holy crap, where am I? What the heck happened? How did I get here? Well, and so I actually, right before we got on, I just read this article in the New York Times about this woman who was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And I didn't know that Alex Trebek was also diagnosed. And so she's an ultra marathoner, perfect bill of health her whole life, 44 years old, and diagnosed with this disease that has a terrible survival rate. And it really stopped her in her tracks, obviously. 2 kids, and it forced her to reevaluate life and what was important to her. And it shouldn't take something like that for us to be able to prioritize, though. And hopefully hearing stories like that and hearing you talk about this guy that's running this multi-million-dollar business, and yet he's fried and he probably feels terrible about not being able to spend time with his 9-month-old son at home, which is obviously the most important thing there is. We got to prevent ourselves from getting to a point where our bodies tell us, dude, you overloaded, like we're shutting you down with a disease or a sickness or something like that. That cannot happen. And maybe it's just kind of taking a stand and saying, look, society might look at Phil Collins and say, man, that is a successful dude. But if we can hear stories like his and stories of other successful people who tell us repeatedly, yeah, you mentioned at what cost. And I think that's something for all of us to remember. At what cost is this worth it? Is this success? Is this extra $10,000 a year? Is this promotion that's going to make you work 10 more hours a week? And I don't have an answer either. I'm adding to what you added to what I added, but I just wanted to throw that out, that we need to be careful that we don't let our bodies reach a point where it's like, I'm stopping this for you because you're not putting an end to it. So boom, we're shutting it down. We need to realize what's important and spend time with in that area of our life, or those areas of our life, before it's too late, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And throwing it all away, if you will. A lot of his pain, a lot of his successful songs, Phil Collins I'm referring to, came from the turmoils that his career created, if you will, in himself and his relationships. And so he wrote some fantastic songs that we all love. It's really all about his ex-wives and the relationships and the failures that went on, and yet it kept snowballing on him. And yes, it's like, wow, I got all this great material because I had some serious mess ups, right? So it's a catch-22 probably in terms of Phil. I don't know. I think part of it is, where do you draw the line? How can you say no? You don't really know it until at the end. He's got regrets. Do you want regrets at the end? Here's what happened. The guy retired, finally stepped aside, thought, this is great. I'll be around all the time. He didn't know how to fit into his life back home. Guy started drinking like more than ever. He went his whole career barely drinking or mixing into any trouble, if you will. And then he stops, and then he doesn't know what to do with himself. It's almost like his hobby went away, his life went away, and he didn't know how to have a life. He thought he did, but it didn't work, right? And he almost killed himself by drinking too much. And his health declined. And you don't have your health, mental and physical, you don't have anything. So it's fun that he's back on the road doing his tour, not dead yet. And I actually looked, they actually ended in the States last October, which I was just not aware of. And so now he's touring Europe, I think starting in June. And I'm like looking into, I just want to go see him in concert. I read his book. I feel closer to him now. I know a little bit about him. It was very personal stuff at times. I thought it'd be kind of fun. He's playing in Stockholm in June. He's playing in Prague. I'm like, well, we want to go visit there. Maybe we should just get on a plane and go see Phil Collins. You can get airfare right out of New York straight to Stockholm for $180 one way. I'm like, that's not bad. So it's something that might be a fun trip. I don't know. But then I had this strange dream last night, as I keep going on and on here, that all of a sudden he launched another North American tour. And you were telling me about it, and I'm having this dream that, like I said, I was so real. I'm like, well, that's cool. Now we can go right here. We don't have to travel that far because it takes time and more money to go see a concert in Europe. So I'm just rambling on and on, but it's amazing what the book kind of hit me in the head with as far as enjoying what you have, being blessed with what you have. And even the most money in the world and the most success, the guy was a train wreck at times. I'm sure he had some great memories. He probably wouldn't trade some of it, but there's other things he's very regretful for. 3 wives, kids with all the wives. He has since reconciled with his last wife, his 3rd wife. And I don't know how successful that is. I think that, time will tell. But it was interesting, Chris. He said after about the 3rd divorce, he started to realize maybe it's not them. Maybe it's me, because the common denominator here is me. And so when things aren't going right and your life's not going well and we keep repeating ourselves in insanity, and expecting different results, maybe we need to look at ourselves and say, I'm not losing weight. Because why? Because maybe it's me. Maybe I need to change what I'm doing. I think I know everything I don't. I'm not moving the needle here. It's probably something I'm doing, right? And so that's kind of what he was saying in the book. And I really appreciated that he came full circle and put himself out there to say, hey, I didn't do it right.
Yeah. And I think what I took most from it that I can apply to my life was his attitude of, once this is over, then I can be fully present. Once I'm done with this, then I'll be able to be the dad that I've always wanted to be, the husband that I've always wanted to be. And I know that I've been guilty of doing that. Once I finish this project, then I can take the kids to do this or whatever it is, from a daily perspective, from a monthly perspective, from a lifetime perspective. And we're barking up the wrong tree if we think in those terms. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. I do. And part of it is just, what are your priorities? Is your priority making money? You think that's a part of it. I remember one of the guys we used to work with at the baseball team said, listen, just remember, all this work, it's for your kids. It's for your kids. So you may not be there, but this is for the kids. And I kept thinking, what good is that? My father was gone all the time, and I don't have a good relationship with him, because he was doing it. Well, maybe he was making money for us to provide. But it's not just about providing, right? Let's have less and more of our connection with our parents and our friends. Let's have more connection with people. Honestly, that's how we enrich ourselves. We may not know it at the time, but I think the enrichment comes from the people that we work with. It's not the work we do. It's the people that we work around. It's not the family gatherings can be kind of a rough thing when there's all these, different parts of family that isn't getting along. But in the long run, the kids don't have that. We need to get the kids together, because that builds connection, right? And so I do think we just have to reevaluate. Are we doing it? Are we living it right? Is this what we want to see? And then as the future goes, will we have regrets? If you can look ahead and say, will I have regrets about how I've been doing things this last year, 2 years, 2 months? That's a good sort of wake-up call. I don't know if you can fix it right away, but it's like we talk about, creating that awareness. So you're looking at things thinking, am I doing something today that down the road I'll be happy I did, or I'll be regretful?
Yeah, it reminds me of the book Living Forward by Michael Hyatt, and I'm drawing a blank of the other guy's name, but they wrote this book, and it's about kind of dividing your life up into different accounts. And we've talked about it a little bit before, but the first exercise that they ask you to do as the reader of this book is to write your own obituary. And how do you want to be remembered? And it's interesting because I'm reading this book now. It's called Youpreneur by Chris Ducker. Same thing. He asks you to do that with your business, like the business that you're trying to create. What do you want the obituary to be? What sort of impact did you want to, or do you want people to say that you had in their life? And I think that's a very valuable exercise, to try to think down the road and to try to think, when it's all over, what are my kids going to say about me at my funeral? What is my wife going to say about me at my funeral? Are they going to say, I know. Are they going to say, he was always there? Or are they going to say, he worked really hard and he provided us with a really cool house, but I wish that he was around a little bit more, you know? And looking ahead like that and thinking about it's, in some ways, it's kind of a morbid exercise, right? But it forces you to face some hard truths about how we're living our lives right now. And are we living in alignment with how we would like the future to plan out? And so I definitely encourage everyone, if you're interested in kind of, you know, seeing what sort of track you're on, man, take a half hour to sit down and think about the obituary that you want to have written about you want to have placed in the newspaper. And is it aligned with the life that you're living right now?
Sounds sort of morbid when you think about it, doesn't it? And we don't actually talk about death or talk about, you know, how we'll be remembered in that vein. I think one thing that's interesting is, you know, life is fatal. Life is fatal. I mean, there's nobody who's ever beat that, right? You're going to die. You're only here a short time. If you really think about it, it's probably 80 years, 90 years. What are you going to do with it? You know, you get one life. It's not a rehearsal, people. This is not a rehearsal. What do you want to do? How do you want to go about doing things? And we learn from our mistakes, no doubt about it. But if we keep repeating them and we don't make those changes, that'll change us as people. Then it's on us, right? It's on us. Sometimes you can't help it because you've caught, you know, you get sick or something, or you've got an illness or something that was medical or mental. But other than that, most of our decisions come from right here, and we probably know the best decision, and yet we'll sabotage ourselves and say, well, I'll take this one more job. Well, this will help us pay for one more car. That stuff's not going to matter to your kids. It's not going to matter to your loved ones. So pick your spots, you know, pick your spots. And I like that. Write your own obituary. Gosh, that might take me like 2 months to fine tune that. I don't know. But it's definitely gets you thinking, doesn't it?
Yeah. And that's what it's about, right? Is getting you to think, creating awareness, and really just looking at how we're living life. And it's so easy. We just gave several examples of just being busy, running around, doing things in our own life and people that we look up to. And it's important to kind of take a step back and see where it's going every once in a while. Sometimes life makes you stop and step back. I want to share with you that we had kind of like a stop moment in our house, just in the fact that that lice is going around. And I don't know if your boys ever had lice, but we'll kind of make it a little more lighthearted than morbid with death. But lice, not good. Lice is not good. So got a couple notices from the school talking about lice, and I went to take Cameron and I to get haircuts last Friday, right after we were done with our video cast, and you made fun of my hair. I said, all right, I'll show you. I'm going to get a haircut, John Magnuson. And the woman shampoos Cam's hair. She's combing, and Amelia and I are over at the bench hanging out, and she walks over to me slowly and nonchalantly and kind of sidles up right next to me and says, your son has lice. She didn't want everyone else in the place to hear, right? This is a salon that we went to, and your son has lice. I'm like, oh. So I walk over with her, and she's kind of combing through his hair, and sure enough, bugs. It wasn't a pretty sight.
My God.
It was
How
gnarly.
about some shampoo over there? I mean, really, what's going on in that house?
It was gnarly, and Cameron felt this small, felt awful about it, as if he did something wrong. And so, you know, that opened up a good conversation about, about growth and him not doing anything wrong. And then we ended up having to spend $300 at this place in Santa Cruz that eliminates lice, checks the whole family for lice. So it was like this several-hour affair in which we went to Knitless Noggins in Scotts Valley, California, and they removed all the lice from Cameron, checked the rest of us. Somehow the rest of us escaped lice, but then we had to come home and we had to wash everything. We had to bag up without air, getting into all of our stuffed animals, all of our pillows and everything. So we're just now kind of coming out of that world of of lice and being lice free. We've been lice free all week, but now it's funny because other parents in our circle are like, my kid has lice too. Two of the moms in our group got lice. It's just like this epidemic in Santa Cruz. And so it's just kind of funny to kind of what we're talking about, shuts everything down for a minute. And in some ways it's kind of it's funny to look back on, but it kind of forces us to come together and spend some time together and look out for each other. And, but it's been kind of a comedy of errors at the same time. I don't know if you guys ever had to deal with lice in your household over the years.
No, we never did, luckily. But I mean, it's nice that you guys were all able to come together and have a lice day.
Lice day. But dad jokes by John Magnuson continued. Yes.
Yeah, the old Yoshi's on Indian School in Central, right up there by Honey Bears. I used to send the interns from the D-backs Productions bullpen there to go pick up some food. And on the Yoshi tag, it would always say, "Have a rice day." And so yours is, "Have a lice day." Hey, honey, have a lice day. Very funny. I'm just poking fun at it. You guys are going to get through it. You know, no one's fatally ill because of it. But it's kind of spooky that you're like, how did this happen right under our noses? And you don't know. You don't even know how it happened. But you just have to take care of it and move on. But yeah, what a interesting thing, because I'm sure Cameron was just like, oh my gosh, you feel like he's like 2 inches tall now, and it's not anything he did. So make sure you pump him up and say, listen, this can happen to anybody. We're getting through it, and it'll be a blip on the radar of your whole life. It's like a spit in the ocean, not a big deal. So we move on.
Yeah, in some ways I was hoping that I had it because I wanted to kind of commiserate with him and go through it with him. And when the lady told us that the other three of us were lice free, I was kind of like, yes, but at the same time, like, damn it, now Cameron's the only one that has it. And then he was, he had his appendix removed, and he's like, why do these things removed? You had yours removed. I know, but he's like, why do these things keep happening to me? I'm like, well, we can't think that way either, right? Because things don't keep happening to you. These are two small things in the grand scheme of things. And if you do think like that, as if you're the victim, then that's going to bring upon more victimhood and more negative energy. So definitely working on him with that. But yeah, it's been a comedy of errors. He's been reading the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books. I don't know if your kids ever read those, but it's all about growing up and being in middle school and whatnot. And I can foresee Cameron, as he devours those books, like writing his own sort of books about childhood when he gets older. And lice will be in there, and how he was the only one that got it. And he almost died from appendicitis. And parenthood and childhood, man, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. But we got to be there for it. We can't be on the road for 13 months and missing out on it, because even the ugly stuff like lice or conflicts at school or whatnot, I mean, that's life, right? That is, in Good Will Hunting. Remember when Robin Williams says to Will Hunting, he's like, oh man, he's talking about his wife farting so loud that it woke up the dog and whatnot. And he's like, that's the good stuff. That's the stuff that you miss when your partner's not there anymore, right? Yeah. And it's so easy for us to take for granted the whole picture, right? It's not always perfect how we want it to be, but the imperfections, the imperfect moments are the moments that bring us closer together and allow us 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, when we're all having Thanksgiving together with our grandkids, say, remember that time you got lice and you were the only one that got lice and you felt really bad about it? So we're creating memories with everything we do, but we got to be there and present with each other, right?
Yeah, no, that's great. You're right. Down the road, that'll be something to poke fun at, and he'll be okay with it then, because like, again, it's a small moment, but it's poignant, it's profound. It's something that at first you're alerted to, and the small moments all add up. And if you're not there for the moments, there aren't any to reflect back on. I think that's what we talked about with Phil Collins. He wasn't around, and he tried to make it up at the end, and that's just not enough. He was dissatisfied. So find what fills your cup and keep filling the cup. Repeat, right?
I like that. Find what fills your cup. All right. Well, let's find what fills our cup for this weekend, heading into the weekend. Let's make sure that we do stuff that makes us happy, that makes us feel like we're connecting with our family, with our friends. I appreciate the connection that we make every week on this call, and have an awesome weekend, my friend.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. Good to see you, and put something nice in that Instapot there.
I'll see what I can do. See you, brother.
Bye now.